People always ask me, like, what do I want to do when I grow up?
Yeah.
And I'm only 16,
Yeah.
so I don't really have it all figured out yet.
Tell them you have no idea. Most people who are 40 don't know what they want to do for a living. Don't worry about anybody else's questions on you as pressure to you having to figure out anything. And here's a good one. When they ask you, ask them what they wanted to be when they were 16, and then ask them if they ended up doing it. You'll learn a lot either way. If they say yes, like me, then I'll explain why. And if they say no, it'll remind them that most people don't know what they want to do at 16. Attention is the #1 asset.
Let's start at the beginning, Gary. What inspired you to draw the original VeeFriends characters? Which was the first one you drew? And what made you want to turn it into a story?
Well, the second part I can, hi, oh my God, it is so good to see you. I cannot wait to talk to you. That is the only teacher that thought I would make anything of myself. That is a legend right there. Mrs. Kennedy is very important in my life. I'm so happy to see you. It is so good to see you. I have no idea which one I drew first. There's 283 characters, but we did film it all, so I'm excited to one day look back at the footage to actually get the answer to which one I drew first. I think what inspired me was multiple things. VeeFriends is a universe that I created once I understood that there was an incredible movement in the NFT space, the digital collectibles. I was very fascinated by the technology. I'd been a early investor of Bitcoin and Ethereum back in 2014 and 16, which were just outrageously advanced technologies. I did the investments, I bought those things, but to be frank, I didn't really understand it even at that time, the profound nature of the blockchain. And when the NFT thing happened in 2017, it was kind of on my radar. There are several people here that I knew when I was a young man and even a teenager, and I was always into collecting trading cards and doing all that kind of stuff. And so the digital collectible thing came very natural to me, and I thought it was interesting. But when the 2017 thing happened, it was it was interesting, but I kind of kept it on the side. I was busy, and I was like, okay, this NFT thing, that's kind of cool, but it didn't really capture me. And then during COVID and the 2020 explosion of NFTs, I'm like, okay, this is now serious. I can see how over the next 5, 10, 15 years, just like I collected wine or art or baseball cards, I think people will collect things that are digital. And so I decided I wanted to be a part of that. First, I wanted to be a part of that as a collector. And I bought CryptoPunks and a lot of things that I believed in. And then I decided I wanted to make my own. And intellectual property was always interesting to me. I grew up very affected by the 80s He-Man and Thundercats and G.I. Joe and Transformers and all these iconic intellectual properties. And so basically, I decided I'm going to create a universe, and I wanted to do two core things: focus on collecting, but also focus on the things that matter to me, which is, positivity, kindness, work ethic, competitiveness, and just a lot of good attributes. And I'm sure no one in this audience is confused. There's plenty of things to focus on when it comes to negativity, and it's constantly around us, but I don't think we have enough energy to optimism, positivity. It's not as sexy or head turning as negativity, and I want to leave positive contributions to society. My currency is positivity, and so I wanted to create this world. I also knew that at that point in my career that I was doing an effective job reaching people, call it 16 to 90 between TikTok and Facebook, but there was no ability for me, GaryVee, especially with my cursing and my style, for me to really reach under 12. And I kind of viewed VeeFriends as a vehicle that I was going to be able to use to get even younger down the funnel. And I'm sure for the many people here who are either parents or have been parented, which is everyone, if you can start forming good behaviors at 3, 4, 5, 6, you're gonna have a much bigger impact. There's a lot of work that many of us have done here through exercise and therapy and meditation and reading and changing our circles to unwind some of the negative things in our life. So I think there's a really massive, I'm not sure there's a bigger impact in the world than being a parent. And I think the next thing you can do is impact the youth. And so I have extreme ambitions with VeeFriends both commercially and selfishly. I want to build a very big business and build a next Marvel, Disney, something of that nature, but a lot selflessly. I think we can leave very good deposits, and I would argue that this kid's book is the first kind of real significant flag in the ground of trying to leave a positive impact.
That's a great answer, thank you. It's so interesting because last night I was at the event that you did at Barnes & Noble, and you talked a lot about impacting kids and making a positive difference, and you talked a lot about the significance of meeting in the middle.
Yes.
You want to talk about why you think that's such an important message to give to kids?
Yeah, I actually think it's a more important message to speak to adults about. I think adults have done a remarkable job of not being in the middle. I think what's actually happening right now in our society is politicians have successfully made us become very edge. We've become fully red or blue. The room for purple has become very challenging in a world where actually in real life, almost everyone's actually some shade of purple. And so I think that's dangerous. I think it's negative. I think it leads to a lot of things in humanity, and then even things I'm passionate about. Let's talk about business. I think anytime that you're over-indexing too far to the left or right on anything, that there's a problem. And I know that anything that has not worked for me as a human or as an entrepreneur has been when I've been out of balance, when I've been too far to a direction or the other direction. And so I think the middle is the special place. I think it's important. In this book that all of you had, that I hope you read with a young one, it's the story of Patient Pig and Eager Eagle. I think patience, it's interesting, as GaryVee, I put out a lot of content. One of the things that most triggers people in a funny way, I have so many go-getters and go hard and hustle and work hard. When I talk about patience, a lot of people really struggle with it because they mishear me. When they hear the word patience, they hear complacency, maybe even to the extreme laziness. To me, patience is imperative. If you want to build anything meaningful, a relationship, a business, it requires an enormous amount of patience. But like the story in the book goes, when Patient Pig is too patient, she starts being late and misses the game. Eagerness is something I have plenty of. I'm passionate about it. I love it. I love going at it. I'm very eager to accomplish and to leave a positive mark. But when you're overly eager, you can become sloppy. If you don't cross your T's and dot your I's, you can be vulnerable. And so, it's a really fun book because I would argue being eager and being patient are beautiful traits. But what the book is trying to do, predominantly for the parents that are reading it, and hopefully leaving a deposit for the kids for the future, is saying even good attributes, if they're out of whack and too extreme, become vulnerabilities.
That's great, thank you. So, I think so many parents, myself included, are really trying to teach our kids, right? The lessons to help them be successful in the world, the things you need to be good at, the things that are core to, reaching your goals, right? In life. You run a 2,000 person organization, you've seen it all. So what do you think the key things are? Obviously patience, eagerness are key traits, but what are really the key traits that you see and you try to teach your kids about being successful in the world?
I believe your relationship with losing is the greatest indicator of how you're gonna navigate life. So I had a very eventful morning this morning. I am 48 and a half, and I am playing too much basketball still. So a couple weeks ago, I played basketball, and I definitely did something to my back and my neck, and so I had a scheduled chiropractor appointment this morning. But to top that, I decided to play basketball this morning at 7 a.m. with my son and some of the guys from the office. And as some of you might have just seen, because I just posted it on social media, I took a very substantial elbow directly to the eye and had stitches this morning. And after, when I was with my chiropractor, he was doing this thing and it was clearly not pleasant. And he made a comment that my pain tolerance was extremely high. And I said, yeah, I get that from my mom. And we laughed and we talked about pain tolerance. And mainly the reason I said from my mom, because my dad's sitting here too, and I get it from my dad too. Both my parents, are immigrants who spent the first 20 years of their life in the Soviet Union. That is called, you were born into pain tolerance. And, we're a family that really back to balance, we probably went too far on the inability to complain. Even mentioning anything would be no way, you can't do that. And he was talking about pain tolerance, and he's been studying it, and he thinks there's a direct correlation to pain tolerance and how you grew up. And I thought it was interesting, and it really made sense to me. I believe the biggest thing you can teach your children is to not fear failure. I think that failure is the greatest teammate of a human being. And I think over the last 30 years, modern parenting has done a very bad job, subjectively, one man's point of view, on over-indexing, on trying to over-coddle every aspect of everything. It's actually so fun to see Senora Kennedy sitting here, my favorite teacher of all time, because where I was about to go with my sentence is, I also find it fascinating what's happened with teachers. Literally 30 years ago, if a teacher gave you a bad grade, parents would go and say, I'm sorry to teachers. Now, when kids get bad grades, parents are going to fight teachers to tell them to give them a better grade. We have completely lost our way. I think, again, seeing a lot of faces that I know my stuff, I think 8th place trophies is the craziest shit of all time. I think that it has created so much damage. The concept that you're gonna celebrate everybody the same is not natural. That's what took down communism. It's not a true thing. It doesn't work. It's not real life. And so I think the number one thing you can teach a child is resilience, emotional resilience, because life is hard. And so I think that over-coddling, over-protecting, and using fear as a weapon is a huge vulnerability. And I think that in general, it makes people susceptible to what I see happen in society. I see it in the workplace all the time. So many of you are gonna be able to really nod your heads on this. I believe that most bosses use fear as a motivator. If we don't hit these numbers, if we don't, I think almost every parent is predominantly selling fear to get kids to do what they want. And I actually think it's a very, very, very dangerous framework. I got very fortunate. I grew up in an era where kids played outside a lot. And I loved sports. So my life was predominantly losing. You're losing. I mean, again, as with my mom sitting here, if you go ask her, most of my first 10 years of my life was around me crying. I was constantly crying because anytime I lost, I cried. I view that as a remarkable indicator of who I became. I cared. Telling kids it doesn't matter if you win or lose is delusional. The only thing that matters if you win and lose. What you win at and lose is the important conversation. You get to define what success is. I think one of the other major societal issues is we have become so one-dimensional in defining success as a monetary win. It's too bad. We've lost our way on public service, on general happiness. We need a redefinition of success. Look, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm good at making money and being a businessman, but I'm also very fortunate at this point in my life that I've spent a lot of time with a lot of people who've made a lot of money, and I know unlimited miserable millionaires. I know unlimited miserable billionaires. Who wants to be unhappy? Who wants to be anxious at night? Who wants to use drugs or alcohol to be able to go to sleep because you're worried? The dollar amount in your bank account has no indication to your peace of mind. But we've grown a whole generation of individuals to fear losing. And we've got to tweak that, and to me, that's the big one. So yeah, I think losing is good. I think losing is, I think it's remarkable. I prefer to lose. That's why I'm a Jets and Knicks fan. I mean it.
I'm a Mets fan.
By the way, I mean this. I grew up a Yankees and Rangers fan, and back to having Senora Kennedy here in high school and Brandon in the back, who I went to high school with. I will tell you that the people that remember, I was a bigger New York Rangers fan than maybe even a Jets fan in high school. But once they won the Stanley Cup in '94, and once the Yankees won in '96, I was out. And I actually never understood it. Nobody did. Everybody used to make fun of me or be confused. It's not a common trait to just quit on your team once they win a championship. Usually you stick around and enjoy it. But in hindsight, now that I'm older and understand it, I think that's how much I enjoy the process and losing. I think it's the better thing, and I think that gives you peace of mind. It makes me prepared for everything. It makes me prepared for everything.
So what are you going to do when the Jets win the Super Bowl this year?
From your lips to God's, I'll take my chances and then put all my energy on the Knicks.
So I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think resilience is so important.
But you can't build it if you demonize losing.
Right. Yeah. No, you have to lose, and learning to bounce back after a tough loss, learning to not get what you want is so key to learning to exist and thrive in the world, right?
We also live in a modern parenting world that doesn't know the concept of consequences. Like, we've gone so hardcore in the last 30 years. Literally 30 years ago, not only were children getting grounded and punished, there was also a little bit of spanking and snapping and a little physical stuff going on. Now, there's zero physical stuff. You'll go to jail. And we live in a generation now where children are not getting grounded. So they're being taught that we have no consequences. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. That's why everyone, by the way, that's the other thing you see on social media. The reason everyone's so nasty to each other is there's no consequences when you talk that way to somebody on social media. I don't know about you, but in Edison, New Jersey, when I was growing up, you talk like that to somebody in the face, they're gonna punch you in the face. And so I think consequences are healthy.
Oh, I still remember when my mother washed my mouth out with soap for the first time. That was unpleasant.
Yep.
Yeah. So, as far as resilience, like, what in your life do you look back on and say, like, that was the moment where you really bounced back from a challenge? What was the thing? I mean, was there one thing that you can point to? Like,
I got so fortunate because when you're a child, school and sports are so much of your life and your family life, right? And so I'm growing up in an immigrant family. So to begin with, that's gonna be less cush than a lot of people. You're just living a different life. Then in school, long before I got into 11th grade Spanish 1, because I failed German freshman and sophomore year, and Senorita Kennedy saved my life. Long before that happened, 7 years before that happened, 4th grade was when I kind of transitioned from getting good grades to bad grades. And so this will make sense for everybody. School is a big factor in your life as a child. Your self-esteem is very wrapped up to what's going on in school. And so in 4th grade is when I started to get bad grades. And when you're getting bad grades, report card after report card, and your teachers are disappointed in you and this kind of stuff, you're learning how to be resilient. You've got grown-ups, and first it starts with your teachers, because they can see it. And I got so fortunate that I had a mother who made consequences. I was grounded for my report cards, but I never felt that my self-worth or who I was gonna become was based on my grades. That was a fine line talk about walking the middle. That's what my mom did brilliantly. I got bad grades, but I got grounded. There was consequences, but I never had my self-esteem wrapped up in it. So I was dealing with adversity very early on because not only are your teachers, and this is the 80s, so some of those teachers were not very politically correct in telling me what they thought about my future. And then you have your friends' parents who know that you're a bad student. And so they've got judgment on you. So basically, grown-ups are looking at me like I don't know if everybody remembers, for some reason, which is crazy because they actually make a lot of money, but in the 80s, everybody loved to say, you're gonna be a garbage man, and that was like the thing. And I was feeling that, and then I was, again, playing a lot of sports. And ironically, 4th grade's a good year for me because up to 4th grade, I was dominant in sports because we were very gifted, the Vaynerchuk boys, with hand-eye coordination. We're good at that. The problem is somewhere around 4th grade is when size, speed, and athleticism becomes part of the equation. And so starting up until 4th grade, I was like one of the best players on my baseball team. It was going really great. And then all of a sudden there was a shift where other variables came into play, and now I'm losing, so I'm dealing with that every day. Ironically, I think it's why I fell in love with business. So I'm losing in school, I'm losing more often in sports, but when I sell baseball cards, or when I sell lemonade, or when I have a garage sale, I'm getting positive reinforcement from the customer. The market was giving me positive affirmation. And my mom was giving me positive affirmation to who I was as a person. And so I think when I look back and try to analyze it, I feel like the two things I became, a businessman and a nice guy, was very, very grounded in those formative years where those were the areas I was getting positive reinforcement on.
That's great, thank you. So just to go back to the book a little bit and VeeFriends.
Yep.
Yeah, so, we're among friends here, right?
Yep.
Which is your favorite character?
That's good. How many people by show of hands have more than one child? Raise your hand. Who's your favorite kid? I know the answer from my mom and dad, but I think, I think for VeeFriends, it ebbs and flows. I will say this, I'm obsessed with accountable Ant. I haven't really developed him yet. I'm kind of saving him for a project I'm working on. But I will say the thing that I'm very passionate about right now is the lack of accountability in society. We have become, talk about something we've lost. We have become remarkable at pointing fingers and not thumbs. It is literally, absolutely everybody's fault but one's self. It's the president's fault. It's the government's fault. It's the governor's fault. It's your boss's fault. I mean, I watch entrepreneurs blame the customer. It's the customer's fault. They don't get it. No, they get it. Customers always get it. They vote with their wallet. Like, if it doesn't work, it's 100% your fault. And so, accountable Ant is very, very high on my list. I would also say that empathy elephant is very big for me. I do believe that empathy is one of the great superpowers of society. I don't know how all of you are wired and your DNA, but for anyone here who actually has the ability to feel other people, not have compassion for them, not feel sorry for them, no, feel them. When you have empathy, you can really do very special things. For me, empathy allowed me to be very caring, and I like that. I like being a good friend and a brother and all that, but more importantly, or actually far less importantly, but in hindsight, what I didn't realize was empathy also allowed me to be such a good salesman. It's very easy to sell when you know what they're gonna say yes to.
But doesn't it make it a little bit of a challenge in business where you're competing against the liquor store down the road, Yeah, I mean, look, I think that comes into perspective. Now we're talking about perspective pigeon. I think perspective matters. It's fun to have my dad here. I think about the liquor store down the road. Like, him and I have a ton of similarities. Even though I love to razz and say I'm like mom, like my dad, as I've gotten older, I realize how much DNA I have for my dad. But we are very different when it comes to competition. We see it differently. I'm very competitive, just like my dad. I just believe that the world is abundant. I believe that when you're talented, nobody stops you. I've never felt that any liquor store in New Jersey or any advertising agency in the world or any other personality that makes content or any other intellectual property that's being built right now, I don't think any of them are taking my customers. I think I'm good enough to get as much as I need. And I do believe the world is abundant. And so I love competing, but I'm incredibly not fixated or concerned about competition because I think it's a complete irrelevant from someone who's capable of executing. Nobody has ever stopped me but myself. That's great, thank you. So there's been a lot of talk about a lot of different things that are happening with VeeFriends. Do you want to tell us about any of the exciting stuff that the future holds? I mean, I'm trying to hold it under wraps, but it's getting out there a little bit too much. But look, I think if you think of anything that you think is, actually I didn't say this just for the people that don't know, because I'm sure many don't. You follow me for different things, wine or business. VeeFriends is really, to me, Pokemon meets Sesame Street. Pokemon from the collectible place. If you don't know anything about VeeFriends and you have eBay on your phone right now while you're waiting in line later, you should really go search on eBay VeeFriends. You'd be shocked what's going on with the trading cards, and some of you are wearing the hats, and it's crazy, and it's been so fun. As you can imagine, someone who grew up collecting everything, to have something that's now collected is like nirvana for me. But it was funny, if you look at the early videos, I talk about Pokemon, but I talk more about Disney. As I was going through this journey,
I gotta tell you, another individual that I don't know if you've ever done any homework on, he's a couple of good documentaries on him. I will tell you that Jim Henson is a very special dude. The more I dig in, I'm like, wow, I really get him. The reason I say Pokemon and Sesame Street is I want the collectible thing, I want the competition. The first kid's book is about a basketball game for a reason. I like the competition, we should keep it, merit, no 8th place trophies. But the Sesame Street thing matters to me. Jim Henson had real intent to leave a positive impact. Sesame Street, if you really study Sesame Street's social impact, bilingual nature, like just good intent, diversity, like just nice, like it's powerful. And then I don't know if any of you remember Fraggle Rock. I don't know if you know how creative works. Sometimes whoever's in charge will give a brief. You have to read the brief of what the agenda is. The entire brief, usually it's meaningful. The entire brief for Fraggle Rock, when he handed it in, was end war. 2 words. I just think it's so, what an amazing ambition. Let's start a kids show that will one day end war. I love that. I believe that if I achieve what I want with VeeFriends over the next 30 or 40 years, that the kids that are growing up, that are born today, that are part of Gen Alpha, will be less anxious. I believe there's a direct correlation to being in the middle and anxiety. And so I'm very passionate about that. So as you can imagine, any intellectual property, Disney, Marvel, you know, anywhere you want to go, the Smurfs, all of it requires cartoons. And so the kids' book is very exciting, and obviously you being in the publishing world, I'm very passionate about it, it's important, but I don't think I can achieve my goal without having a hit cartoon. So we're really excited about that. We're going to do that. When I grew up, it was Saturday morning cartoons and after school cartoons. When my brother AJ, who's 11 years younger than me, when he was growing up, cartoons lived on something called Nickelodeon. And that's where a lot of you were affected by cartoons. Today, as I'm sure some of the ones with young ones here, cartoons live on YouTube Kids. So that's gonna be an exciting platform to attack. We think we've got a really good take on it. I'm feeling confident, but it is a hits business. It may take a couple cracks at it to get there, but I don't believe that I can really get it to the stratosphere without having a hit cartoon and then hopefully one day a feature film. And I'm excited about going at it.
We're gonna take some questions?
Yep, questions, great. By the way, I'm happy to go. I know a lot of you leapt a long way. It means a lot to me. We can go wine, we can go business, entrepreneurship, kids content, NFTs, wherever you want to go, I'm here for you.
So Gary.
Yes, Senora Kennedy. How are you, my dear? Let's clap it up for the best teacher ever. I just want everybody to know why I'm giving her so many flowers. I just want everyone to know. I failed freshman and sophomore year German. In the state of New Jersey, when I was in high school, you had to pass 2 years of language to graduate. I don't know if you understand how, I'm pretty chill and knew I was gonna be okay, and my mom's the best, but I had a pretty good feeling that if I wasn't gonna graduate high school, I was gonna have a problem. And to go into Spanish 1 as a junior, and Senora Kennedy, Brandon, Liz, you know this, you were in the high school. She didn't have a reputation like some pushover teacher. And I remember thinking like, oh man, I gotta take Spanish 1, and who am I gonna get? And then you see, and I'm like, oh shit, Senora Kennedy, like she was a real teacher. It wasn't gonna be some cakewalk. And what she did for me, to see me when no one could, and help me get through, means a lot to me.
I do look at your Facebook postings, not every day because it's a little too much. A couple of recent posts, Gary, especially one from your father.
Yes.
Okay, about your word is bond.
Yes.
And one about your reputation is currency.
Yes.
And whether it's in business or in your personal life, I think those words are ones to remember because that makes you who you are.
100%.
So, okay.
It is really good to see you. Really, thank you for being here.
It's good to see you, Gary.
Thank you so much, Senora Kennedy. And actually, you know, usually, especially when they're both in the audience, I love to give my mom as many flowers as possible. So my dad calls me later and goes, what the hell are you doing? Why aren't you but I gotta say, and I've said this a lot publicly, but I'll just say it. I had such gift of gab and such ability to like read, and I was so committed to selling my baseball cards or lemonade or anything else. My dad really, really helped me when, you know, my father took back to extremes. My dad believes that if you embellish a little bit, it is like a hardcore lie. He's a very kind of like right down the, it's a big passion of his, and it's very admirable. And it really helped me. Like, you know, I started, you know, my dad worked so hard, so many hours, so I didn't get to spend time with him really until I started working here. And, you know, it really, really, that adjustment, this is why I'm so passionate about parenting or kids content. Like, you're really impacting these people. You are really forming into who you're gonna be at these young age. And it's also why I'm so passionate about meditation and therapy. And, you know, because watching grown-ups unwind and tweak certain things that didn't work out for them is wonderful, because I really do think that's the life journey. And so, Senator Kennedy, I'm so glad you picked on, you know, your word is bond. It's a very big deal to my dad, and then I took on that energy and it helped me. And I still had who I was and I'm me, but I believe this, I could have been a much worse version of myself had that not been important to him, and it's cool.
Gary, I'm a super big fan of the positive vibes you express on LinkedIn, especially.
Thank you.
This can be very, very difficult.
Sharp elbows.
I'm in sales, so I deal with the best and worst of it all.
Yes.
But your attitude and what you express to people, it has an impact. Please keep doing it.
I will, my friend.
I have one question.
Please.
I understand you're opposed to higher education.
No.
No, let me finish.
Please.
You have a disposition towards where higher education is going, I guess.
In a certain circumstance, but I'll let you finish, I'll explain.
But my question is I'm a college graduate.
Yep.
And I look back on it, and it was a liberal arts degree.
Yep.
There's a lot of scamming, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people they get higher education, become lawyers.
Yeah, of course.
Whatever it may be.
Yes.
The outcome, the modern day higher education just isn't what it used to be.
Yes.
And people like you are an inspiration. You don't need a college education to become
Definitely not a businessman, right? Entrepreneurship is such a wild craft. Learning about I'm so fortunate in my life right now. I get to go to some of the greatest universities in the world and speak to entrepreneur class, and I look at the curriculum, I speak to the professors, and it's very challenging. Going to school to be an entrepreneur is like going to school to be a basketball player. You need to be on the court to be a basketball player. Entrepreneurship is taught in the trenches of the act of building businesses. You can learn principles, but I don't think anyone's confused. You can learn the principles of running a business through ChatGPT in full detail in 2 seconds. The reason I was jumping in, I just want everyone to hear this. My historic push on college was twofold. To your point, there's certain crafts that needed it less, like what the world I was in. But second, taking on extraordinary amounts of debt that had no correlation to getting an outcome was what I was yelling about 15, 10, 12 years ago. And I took a ton of heat for it. Most of the emails I would get would be parents yelling at me because they overheard me with their kid watching the video and they were upset. In this last decade, it is crazy to watch the repositioning of how we all as parents think about. There was shame for parents if their child didn't go to college. That's what was sending everyone to college. And then I got fortunate. I had parents that created a life for themselves and were willing to pay for it. What about the parents that were shaming their kids to go to college and making them take on the debt for something that was never gonna do anything for them? My argument was like, we need to talk about this. Honestly, the reason I don't really talk about it anymore is I think the world has figured this out in a much bigger way. And I meet parents all the time at airports and events and things like this where I can see it. They're not just giving me lip service because they think I'm cool. They're open to their child not going to college because we are starting to learn that there is not a direct correlation, and the cost has gotten so extreme. And This is also, my other point was, when we were growing up, there was no internet. Not only is there the internet, which has ungodly amounts of actual information, but this AI thing is real. Artificial intelligence is one of the most profound technologies in the history of time. The little ones in here right now, like, do you remember the yellow pages? Like, and then we grew up, a lot of us, in the Google era. Google search, Mona, my fiance, is using ChatGPT multiple times instead of Google now. My brother AJ doesn't even use Google anymore. Fully ChatGPT. And it works better. Like, if you know how to be, you gotta learn how to use it. I'm sure some of you remember, I myself remember, when search engines first came out, you had to like learn how to use it well, you know? And so the world's, like, asking children to memorize information and regurgitate it on a blank piece of paper, what are we doing? That's not gonna cut it. And so, especially if we're pounding them with debt. And the debt part was always my part, because I was always close to 20 and 30-year-olds and could see how much it was killing them.
In terms of fear,
yes.
Like you were talking to parents, I don't know who's the parent in the room, but to not enforce it on their children, but what about people who've already grown up? That like their parents may have like sheltered them, like how do we get rid of it?
Yeah, I mean, this is why like I was talking about earlier, I'm so inspired that we live in a time where a young woman like you even is knowledgeable enough to know to ask that question. Like, we live in a great time now. Like, for a lot of us, you know, I'm 48, so I touch a lot of 50, 60, 70-year-olds. Like, 70-year-olds didn't grow up with the knowledge of being this young, of like, what should I address that I got affected by? I think people get overcorrected and become entitled and overcaught, but what should you work on? Again, every person's different. I personally believe, first of all, therapy is remarkable, but it's also not financially achievable to everybody. So you have to remember that. That's one. Two, I work out. I started getting serious about my health 10 years ago, but I can tell you right now, I don't get any substantial mental benefit from working out. I really don't. Like, I don't get the runner's high. I just get the wake up in the morning and pissed I have to do it. Like, I'm in that camp. Other people get a lot of value from meditation. Has had a huge explosion. That's wonderful, and that works for some. That, by the way, is not my go-to either. For me, it is choosing to consume positivity over negativity. I believe that I believe that what you need to do is spend time consuming people and hanging out with people that don't like fear, that aren't succumbing to fear, that fight against fear. I believe what is in your ears and in your eyes fully dictates who you are. My greatest issue with society right now is how many mediums push negativity and watching what it does to people when they consume so much negativity. So I think the best way for you to get less fearful is twofold. One, surround your ears and your eyes both with physical people and information that you choose to consume that is based on fighting fear and choosing optimism. And two, were you scared to ride a bike or swim?
At first, probably.
Yeah, I was very scared of both. As a matter of fact, it's fun to have my sister here. My sister, this is something I've never liked to say publicly, but it's true. My sister's 3.5 years younger than me. She learned to swim before me by about 7.5 minutes. I was at the pool playing knock hockey. I heard my mom go, "Yay, Liz," because she learned how to swim. I shit my pants out of fear that my sister swam before me, jumped up from left knock hockey, jumped in the pool, scared crapless, and learned how to swim on the spot, and then tried to convince my sister for a year that I learned how to swim first. That's called being competitive. Where I was going with that is I was scared to swim. I was scared to ride a bike because I didn't want to scratch my knee, but you just have to do it, and you have to scratch your knee, and you have to take in a little water and choke. Whatever you're scared of, the only actual way to do it is to do it. The thing that I think gets people to do it is by surrounding themselves with information and energy that gets them there, because I think negativity hangs out with negativity, and I think positivity hangs out with positivity. I would be, yeah, thank you for that. It's a very big one, my man, thank you. If you feel like you might be skewing negative, or you wish you were a little more positive, pay very close attention to who you spend time with on the phone. I believe that negative people talk with negative people and they just circle around each other, talk about everything is bad. And so I think changing who you spend time with and what you listen to has the single biggest impact on human beings.
Hi, Gary, how are you?
I'm well, my friend. What's your name?
My name is Kyle.
Kyle.
I don't know if I can give you anything.
Sure can.
I knew I was going to see you at some point today. I have a bunch of old chess cards.
I will take those, my man. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Question I have is, I had twin daughters, I want to say a week before the pandemic hit. My girls were born March 2nd. In the hospital, those next couple of days trying to figure things out, came home, everything shut down. Last 4 years have been absolutely insane. I'm an insurance broker trying to build my agency, do a lot of independent work with a bunch of different carriers. I'm able to help out so many people in Philadelphia. I'm from Pennsylvania. Being an entrepreneur, building up your business and your brand, how has that impacted your family life? How have you juggled being a present father?
Yep.
I didn't grow up with my dad around.
Yep.
So the eager eagle and trying to deal with being the patient pig.
Yeah.
I'm that middle ground
Yeah.
because I know I can go get it, but I know that I want to be there. So.
This is a super fun question that I think will bring a lot of value to a lot of people. So, couple things. First and foremost, I think a lot of you know this, I love talking about parenting and parenting advice, but I like to talk about it in the macro. I think actually one of the craziest things in the world to do is to tell someone else how to parent their children. They have no context, it's crazy talk. 1. 2, I think the greatest gift that parents could give themselves is grace. There is no confusion, I think, to anyone that parenting is an incredibly challenging job, right? You love them so much. Of course, fear is part of the equation. You're scared to lose them. You're scared for something to happen that's bad. I just saw my mom and she's like, who's the guy that elbowed you? I'm gonna kill him. Then she's like, I'm 48, that's where her mind goes, right? So when you're parenting, it's hard. Plus, then it becomes circumstantial. I had a father who came to this country with nothing. We lived in a studio in Queens and had to build a life. So I didn't have the luxury of having him around. So when I became a parent, I was a workaholic too, but I was around more than my dad. And so I don't know, at the time when it was happening, I was like, I'm around because my context that I grew up with was different. And so even though I knew I was working a lot and more than my contemporaries, by the standards of what I grew up with, I thought I was putting in a lot of time. My children are 15 and 11 now, and now you're in a place where you can start to understand, like, well, how do you feel about it? And probably 3, 4, 5, 2 years ago, I was like, you know what? I want to adjust and put more time in now because once it's 18, we all know the story, right? I don't choose to beat myself up even though I feel like I've wanted to adjust. I think one of the great mistakes that parents do is they beat themselves up. You're trying. You're doing the best you can. That doesn't mean don't be accountable and don't give yourself a pass. Where I'm going with is this. The fact that you're even asking me this question means your twin girls are very lucky. You're gonna try, but I also don't want you to beat yourself up because you're trying to build something for your family. This goes back to the middle. When people wear a badge of honor that they've never missed a kid's, volleyball game in 18 years, I think that's beautiful. But then a lot of those people that I meet are also talking to me about how their careers are in big trouble and they need help and there's a problem. And I'm like, maybe you went too far. Where I'm going with that is, it's not the cool, noble thing for me to tell you that it's okay for you to miss the recital of your twin girls on a Friday. But I can tell you as a human being that if that happens to coincide with you closing the biggest deal for your insurance company of all time, that's something you have to focus on. And children react to intent. This is very important because humans do. Children react to intent. There's plenty of parents that went to every event, but were on their phone the whole time, or were talking to the buddy next to them. So they checked the box that they went to the Little League game, but their kid knows they didn't give a crap. They were there to have a couple of beers with the buddies and weren't paying attention to them at all. intent matters. So as long as those girls know that you love them and you intend to love them and you tried to the best of your abilities, but occasionally things popped up, I think work-life balance is a very interesting framework. First of all, what's balance? Who gets to decide? You and your partner get to decide. Then your kids will tell you about it when they're 20. Even when you have the greatest parents in the world, you have plenty of feelings about what they did wrong, right? So like there's nobody who's grown up who doesn't say, I wish they did this, or I wish they did that, or I have feelings about that. It's the most special bond of parenting, right? But I think that you can't beat yourself up. You're trying to provide, and there's going to be times where you have to make a sacrifice, and as long as you're deciding and you feel good about your decision, I think people would be very shocked how resilient children are to the occasional missteps of a parent, but I think the intent is the punchline. Thank you. You're welcome, my man.
So we're just gonna quickly reset for the book signing and photo.
Question for you.
Yes.
I'm going to school to be a vet, right?
Yes.
Like a veterinarian.
Yes.
But we also have like a business of like breeding dogs for 20 years. My
Love
parents
that.
did
Yep.
it, so like I'm building it now. How do I
Bring them
cross the two?
together?
Yeah. Or don't keep them separate.
Both will work.
Okay.
I think the thing you do is predominantly focus on doing social media content about both, and then organically and see what happens and let it come to you and then make decisions on what to do with it.
Out of your mind, what's first? Besides Instagram, I'm every day.
TikTok, I mean, YouTube Shorts is huge.
Okay.
It's much bigger than people realize.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Question for you.
Yes.
Let me take a picture first.
Okay.
So I'm young, and I spoke to your sister about it because
Yep.
she just came up
Yeah, I
with
saw
it.
you were
But,
talking.
As a real estate agent,
Yes.
in the space where there's so much clutter,
Yes.
how do you, I want to become, everybody wants to be luxury, of
course.
But I have a problem networking because I don't drink and do all the things that networking.
Drinking is not a requirement for network. Don't come up with an excuse.
Like our society builds it as.
But, I mean, believe it or not, even in this business, I didn't drink.
Okay.
Golfing, hosting dinners. There's a million ways to make coffee.
Coffee shop.
100%.
Okay.
Don't let that get in your head.
Okay.
All right. Good luck. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Hi.
Thank you for coming.
Can I ask you some advice?
Of course, brother.
So, people always ask me, like, what do I want to do when I grow up?
Yep.
And I'm only 16,
Yeah.
so I don't really have it all figured out yet. So
Yeah.
I just
So
want to ask you.
Tell them you have no idea. I mean, most people who are 40 don't know what they want to do for a living. Yeah, I promise you, like, first, don't worry about anybody else's questions on you as pressure to you having to figure out anything. And ask, here's a good one. When they ask you, ask them what they wanted to be when they were 16, and then ask them if they ended up doing it. You'll learn a lot either way. If they say yes, like me, then I'll explain why. And if they say no, it'll remind them that most people don't know what they want to do at 16.
Thank you.
Amazing. Nice to meet you. My brother.
How are you?
How are you?
So, I saw you here last year, actually.
Yes.
So I have a question. I'll be a freshman in college next year.
Yes.
Do you have advice? I want to network as much as possible with professors and
Yes.
peers and stuff.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I think it's it's similar to what I said earlier. It's a game of lack of fear. You just ask. It's a numbers game.
Should I actually join as much as possible?
100%.
Yeah.
And then if something doesn't work, you leave in, and if it doesn't work, out. You understand? Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to tell you something really fast. So we always talk about like certain questions that you like, whatever, get to know each other. And
Yes.
one of the questions that you asked me was if you can have 3 people, dead or alive, and you can get together and sit down somewhere, who would they be?
I got this answer. Both of my grandfathers, I do, because I've thought about it. Both of my grandfathers, because I didn't get to really know them. One was gone very early. My dad lost his dad at 15, and my mom lost her mom. I lost my grandfather when I was 3. I don't remember him.
Yeah.
So those 2 for sure. And then Randy the Macho Man Savage.
Okay.
He was my favorite wrestler, and I really I'm sad that I never got to chop up with him.
Yeah.
That's it. Those are my
That's
3.
awesome. Well, what I was going to say is you're one of my 3.
You're very
So we
sweet.
went,
Yeah.
I got her to meet 2 so far.
Yeah.
So the last one I'm trying.
Yeah.
I'm very humbled. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love you.
I love you too, Gary. You're amazing. You really are. I was thinking about
June, you know, correcting exams, and you came in my classroom, am I going to pass? Am I going to pass? And I admire everything that you have done. You were just wonderful. And I thank you for the Facebook postings, because people just say, you really know Gary? I said, yeah, I do.
You really know Gary. I love you a lot. Thank you for everything you did today. Really.
1 second, sorry. 1, 2, 3.
I couldn't wait to come here today because I thought, oh, I'm going to sit in the back.
It's so good to see you. I saw you right away. It made me so happy.
Okay. All right, Gary.
Thank you so much. And I resonate with you because you are a son of immigrant's parents. I'm an immigrant. I came here 10 years ago just to improve my English, and I opened my business.
Good
so
for you.
it's complicated. But now at the point that finally I got money, I'm pretty successful, but I feel guilty every time that I'm not working or that I'm spending the money that I earn struggling all the time. Any suggestion, Eddie? Because you say happiness is not correlated with money. Now I'm where I want it to be. And
do you feel like you're valuing anybody else's opinions? Like for real?
No.
Nobody else? Nobody else?
No, it's me. Just I feel like I'm scared of spending the money
That I
because then
understand.
I'm gonna get back to where
broke.
I started.
It's very common. Very common.
And I not enjoy so it's better not to have them at this point, because I'm like, I was better before that I was traveling, and now I'm like,
It's why it's the middle. You're right. You don't want to go crazy and lose it all. But to not be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor, that's also not healthy. So this is what I do, because I'm also very conservative, because I come from immigrants, is when I'm feeling most not excited about it, I slow down. And then if I work hard and feel like I could do it again, I think it's gonna go like
it's
this.
so good to see you like you're a real person.
I'm a real person, not just on the screen.
Very, very real. Thank you so much.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.